Man, Clark Lee is fired up. He's reinvigorated. Since he's decided to take over the defense, this team is trending up, and you should be fired up too. Let's go.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. On today's episode, we discuss Clark Lee's most recent podcast appearance on Vandysports.com, how he feels a new fire since taking over the defense, and him kind of really just finally seeing the light. Also, Vandyboys, they lay a 20-burger on Indiana State. The transfer portal kids, Jacob Humphrey and Jayden Davis, are absolutely red hot. So Tim Corbin doing a phenomenal job there, as well as freshman Cameron Kozeal is just lighting it up. And those three, among others, but those three are really standing out right now. So thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So Clark Lee, he appeared on the Vandy Sports podcast. Credit to them, credit to that site. Joey Dwyer was the one who interviewed him, and it was a phenomenal interview. And Clark Lee, I think there's been, and honestly, before I kind of really get into why I felt like this was a great interview and why Clark Lee seems to be in a much different place, is he just seems like fired up. He seems super focused, like a laser sharp focus that I've never seen in him before. He's fired up. You should be too. And I think their goal of getting to a bowl game is now well within reach, and you should definitely go to FanDuel right now and smash the over on 2.5 wins, because after listening to that and just kind of observing some things, I'm fired up too. And so this is going to be great. So he, like I said, man, like the first bit of it is just, he just seems, honestly, the reason I have a lot of confidence right now is just he seemed very focused and relaxed. Not kind of on edge, and not seem like he was very distant, which I've heard him before, where it just seems like he's just kind of robot coach speak and all of that stuff. So, and that can be, obviously, I'm here to kind of translate coach speak for you, but I just don't see a lot of it. I thought he was way more candid and transparent than I thought he would ever be. Because head coaches just aren't that way. So if you get a chance to listen to that, make that your second listen. After this, you should go check it out. I think it's worth the listen, especially because Clark Lee is. You just feel a little bit different about him after listening to this. So going 2-10, and if you ask him, he'll tell you that that's not good enough. I think from the outside looking in, if he had to critique himself, he would say, hey, I wasn't as dialed in as I needed to be. I wasn't as cognizant of what was underlying the surface as needed to be, and change should have been made. I should have been more involved. All of that stuff. I guarantee you he would say that stuff about his program. So just recognizing it at season's end is good. Understanding that, making the changes, things like that, all the things that he's done has been a phenomenal response to such an abysmal season where really in a lot of games they weren't even competitive. And they play, and I don't want to criticize the effort because the guys played hard. It just, when I say they weren't competitive, it just seemed like the plan was incompetent. It just didn't seem like they kind of knew what they were doing or what they wanted to do or what they wanted to accomplish. So for that, I think recognizing that is the first step in the right direction. So like that has got me fired up. That I think got him kind of reinvigorated. And I think that was the first step of this whole big change was him taking over the defense. And one of the quotes he had from the podcast, he said, he is reinvigorated. He goes, I love that quote. This is a direct quote. He said, I love that transition. It's reinvigorated me. I'm on fire to improve this program. I'm on fire to improve the on-field performance and the way we play football. So that a lot of that is geared specifically to him taking over as defensive coordinator. But again, a lot of that quote is also in reflection of like all the things he basically it's an overhaul. So he's fired up, and I think honestly you should be too. So for that I think is extremely good. One of the things he said is like, after the Kentucky game, one of the things he made mention to, the 45-28 loss to Kentucky, he said that's when he kind of noticed it, and he said it hit him in the face. And there were some things that bubbled to the surface after that game, in the aftermath of that game, that was alarming. So, and at the time that he wanted to address it, but at the time, it was one of those things where like you can't really address it at that point in the season. You just kind of have to let it play out and just kind of play damage control as best you can. And at that point, you knew some sort of change was inevitable. I think the vast majority of people thought the change was going to be at the top, where Clark Lee was going to get let go. That obviously didn't happen, but I think behind the scenes, he knew it had to happen. I think Candace Story Lee and the administration probably told him that it needed to happen. It was one of those things where, well, you're telling me it needs to happen. It's going to happen anyway. It would have happened regardless. But I think they're gonna. I feel like they're gonna get rewarded for their patience a little bit, because I think Vandy's going to have a pretty good season. I think they're going to end up back in a bowl game this year. They were so close 2 seasons ago. This past season, 2-10 was a massive step in the wrong direction. But you just break down. I've broken down a lot of the overhaul stuff. Talked about Harding Harper on yesterday's episode about the impact that he's going to bring from a scouting and recruiting perspective, the offensive coordinator role, stuff like that. But like, I think the whole point of this is just how Clark Lee is handling it, right? And how he is just kind of finally, it just seems like he understands. He's a lot more relaxed now. And I think a lot of that he's learning. He's learning some things as far as like, okay, well, I need to be more aware. And I think for him, the thing that refocused him was getting back in the defensive coordinator spot. He's like, okay, well, if I'm going to take over the defense, I need a really good offense. I need somebody I can trust, and somebody that can do something unique, and somebody that's been a head coach before, somebody that's managed this thing. So he hired Tim Beck, right? And he's constantly evaluating things. He knew that, he knew pretty early on offensively, they didn't have an identity. He kept using the word identity. They didn't have an identity. They were out of sync. They just couldn't. It just looked like, I can't say what it actually looked like because I can't say those words on this show, but that's what it looked like. And honestly, that's why a lot of people transferred, because when you go through something like that, which was an unmitigated disaster for most of the year, for all of the year, really. When you go through embarrassing losses to UNLV and getting smacked in your conference schedule, going 0-8, I think you realize a lot of things. And by realizing a lot of things, you start to self-scout. So, and I think also the other biggest takeaway I got from this was just, again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I'll go a little more detail now, but just just watch his body language when he's talking to Joey Dwyer. Just look at his body language. And I think this should give you confidence because, like, look at this body language and look at previous interviews' body language. See if you can notice a difference. You may not be able to. I certainly did. Like, in seeing some of his appearances, I certainly noticed that, like, he just seemed a little more relaxed, a little more open, a little more willing to answer the tough programs, the tough questions and things like that. And I think you can tell that it's absolutely, like, a lot of coaches say, I'm reinvigorated, I'm fired up, changes need to happen, I'm good, and behind the scenes they're probably thinking, oh, we're screwed. But you can see the confidence all over his face. Like, you can see just because he's just relaxed. He's like, hey, man, like, kind of hit me in the face. These things were going on the surface. We didn't quite realize themselves. And it was alarming, but, we had to, things like that, like, he knows that he's doing the right thing. He knows that he's hired the right guys. He knows that Coach Steiner in the strength department is absolutely crushing it. Right? He knows all of that. And you can sense it. Just watch him. Just watch his body language. You can sense it. And he's fired up. He's taking over the defense. If that fires him up, that fires me up, and that should fire you up. So get behind this program because I think this is going to be a massive step in the right direction. So bowl game is in reach. They're aiming for a bowl game. That's what it is. And here we go. And we can continue to break down why, but we'll have some spring practice stuff to kind of talk about, kind of discuss as far as, like, how things are kind of really shaking out as we get closer to the season. So, but that's not the only thing that's firing me up right now. Vandy baseball, Vandyboys. If you watch the game, it was a show. It was quite the show. We're going to talk about what made it quite the show. They 20-pieced Indiana State, so we're going to talk about that here. Just hang on. All right, we are brought to you by Gametime. That is right. Have you ever had a not so positive ticket buying experience? Well, Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. Because I know all of you have probably had those experiences where, like, you get bamboozled on prices. You get to your seat and you realize there's a giant pole in the middle and you got an obstructed view. All of that stuff. Well, again, peace of mind is the key here. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. It's really, really cool. They have a diagram of the stadium and they have a big old picture right here that shows you your view. So it's really, really good. They have all-in prices up front to show you your total. So you know what you're getting, a great deal before you check out. So you know exactly what you're getting into. You can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. It's really, really easy. They have flash deals, zone deals. So you pick the section. So you go on the app, you'll notice it just has a section and a price. It doesn't have individual seats. So you just pick the section. And a lot of times Gametime will give you discounts for allowing them to pick your seats. They also have the Gametime guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. So if you go on SeatGeek or any of these other places and find tickets in the same section for less, they will credit you 110% of the difference. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, you're going to download the Gametime app and you're going to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, you're going to use promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And I just realized I forgot the overlay. So here's what you're going to do. You know my name. So right there, in case you're missing it, Gametime, download it, do it. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Make sure you check out Locked On SEC. Also, make sure you go check out Clark Lee's interview as well. And to see what you think, I'm interested to know your opinion as well. Do you feel like he's relaxed? Whatever. So But yeah, Vandyboys, they stomped the Sycamores with a 20 burger. They 20-pieced them, run ruled them, whatever you want to call it. But like, here's the thing. Here's the thing I love. And you're starting to kind of see this happen. I knew there was a little bit of a youth movement, but I'm going to extend the word youth movement to like newcomers as well. I'm going to treat them kind of like their youth, right? Some of them kind of are. But two guys that really stand out as far as portal guys, Jacob Humphrey and Jayden Davis. And you look at what they've done, it's been incredible. Jayden Davis and Jacob Humphrey, especially from the portal perspective. I'll get into Cameron Kozeal here in just a minute, but like Humphrey had the best game of his career at Vanderbilt. He has been, he led the freaking thing off with he led the bottom half of the inning with a home run. He made a diving catch. He stole bases. He hit the baseball. He went off, dude. He hit the home run, went 432 feet. He was just crushing, man. And he's been like that since day one he got here. He's been the best word to describe Jacob Humphrey is spark plug. He can hit it with enough power. Now I think we had a wind advisory here in Nashville, so I think he got helped out with the wind a little bit. But when you hit a ball 432 feet, like I think at the rate that he hit it at 106 miles per hour, it was the exit velocity. I think with those stats, the ball might not have went 432 feet, but it still would have went out of the yard. And he's been a dynamic player. And the word to describe him, or the two words, however you want to classify it, it's got a hyphen, maybe. Spark plug. He's been a spark plug for this team. Like every time he's in the game, it just seems like he's doing something. He's stealing a base. He's running down a fly ball that other people can't get to. He's bunting. He's advancing runners. He's putting pressure. He's on the pitcher by taking him deep into counts, or he's being annoying on the base paths. Things like that. Like he's just making a major impact in all aspects of the game. So like I just don't see how you can keep him out of the lineup at this point. And same goes with Jayden Davis. Jayden Davis is improving by the day. And Jayden Davis is somebody, he did it at Samford. He was their best hitter. He was, it was good. And he's had every time he's in there, it just seems like he's driving the ball somewhere. He's been red hot, and he's been doing a lot of damage as well. So, hats off to these guys. And Jayden Davis can play a lot of different positions, and that's been really, really valuable for this team because he's been taking over the second base spot right now, and Kozeal's been the DH, which Kozeal's been just tearing the freaking cover off the ball. He went 4 for 5 tonight as well. Speaking of newcomers and freshmen, he had his first career homer. He drove in 5 runs tonight. He's been aggressive from the offensive standpoint. So he's just a freshman too. So he's had his best game of his Vanderbilt career as well. And he just continues to have command up there at the plate. Great discipline. One of the things you look at with discipline is discipline's not only sitting on your pitch, taking things deep into, taking the counts deep, forcing walks and things like that. It's also having the wherewithal to know, okay, this pitcher's going to leave one up in the zone, and this pitcher's going to make a mistake, and I'm going to make him pay. Right. It's also having that wherewithal. It's like, okay, this guy's struggling a little bit. I need to jump on first pitch because he's probably going to leave one up in the zone. If I take it, I'm going to miss my chance. And knowing that, and knowing when to also take pitches and things like that, you kind of go up there with a plan. And the point of all that is going up there with a plan. And to do that as a freshman, I think is very, very special because you have you have some things happening with that. So I think when you look at this game, Those three guys really kind of stand out. It's been a newcomers team type of team this year. Like those are the guys that are impressing the most so far, especially the three I just named. When I say newcomers, I'm including freshmen as well, because there's been a lot of great freshman performances all around. So again, hats off. We're going to continue. I think this Vanderbilt team is going to continue. They have Evansville later on today. That's going to be a game where I think you're going to see Andrew Dukanich, which I'm not. It's not official yet, but you're going to see Andrew Dukanich as your second midweek starter. So I'd like to see Braden Holcomb back in the lineup at first base. I would like to see Jayden Davis and Jacob Humphrey. I loved the lineup today, and I'll tell you why. Just give me 1 second. All right, I won't forget the overlay this time. All right, this episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. So you can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right. Thank you for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Thank you to the everydayers. Make sure you follow us on social media at Locked On Vandy and at Coach Burton 36 if you want to follow me personally. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're spreading the word. Be a friend, tell them all about what you're seeing here on this show. We're 2 subscribers away from 200. So let's make it happen. All right. Indiana State, Vandyboys, was coming into yesterday's episode, talked about what you kind of needed to do against a team like Indiana State, which had really good pitching, which came in with really good pitching. Their lineup has been raking here of late, and they hit a few home runs tonight. But coming into this game, the thought process was throw some speed out there, put some guys out there. They're going to hit the ball into gaps. They're going to get the ball down and just get on base and wreak havoc. And that they did. Tim Corbin must have listened to the show. He must have had me tapped into his office, because he put my favorite lineup out there. And honestly, I think you lean into it. I think they've got enough pop. I think people are worried that this lineup doesn't have enough pop. They have something. It may not be home run pop, but they have some juice somewhere. And that juice, that outfield with Hewitt, Lanieve, and Humphrey, that's got a lot of speed to it. That's got a lot of pop to it. That's got a lot of we're going to dump the ball down the left field line and just freaking run. And that they did. You have Espinal, who's crushing a little bit. You have R.J. Austin, who's been playing really well. Jonathan Vastine, he walks. He has a great approach at the plate. He's somebody that's pesky, gets on base. And I think you have a team that this team is very streaky. Like when they're on, but also when they're off, they just go cold. So I'm curious to know what they're going to do against Evansville. But this lineup, I loved this lineup. And for the reasons of, hey, when the pitchers presumably are a tough matchup, you just want to get guys that are going to get on base and get around. And guys you can sack fly in, you can bunt to advance them, and single scores 2, those type of situations where, early it was like that. First couple innings it was like that, and then all of a sudden the bats just ignited and they exploded. So and a lot of it was Cameron Kozeal going 4 for 5. You had a lot of guys crushing. And so made made life easy for J.D. Thompson. And his name's not over here on the sidebar, but I mean, I don't think you can talk about this game and not talk about what he was able to do. He was lights out. He pitched a freaking gem again. And if it was a close game, he would have gone 7. He was set to go probably 7 innings. He was going to go deep into this game. But they had already put a 20 spot on him, so they probably just took him out and said, "Hey, we're not going to risk anything. I don't see us losing this game." And I think that's kind of the thought process there. We're going to get some guys out there, some innings. They only got 1 inning out of a guy because of the run rule. So it was very nice to see. I thought J.D. Thompson was attacking these hitters very, very well. The ball just. It was flinging off his hand. I thought he had really good control, good command. You saw him at times. He had some mistakes where something was left up, like the first 3-run homer. I think he got himself into a little bit of trouble in that inning. He just threw some. He just made a few mistakes, and Indiana State's good enough to make him pay for that. But what I really liked about it is he gave up 3 on homer and then struck out the next batter to end the inning. Like I think his recovery is a lot better. And down the stretch in conference play, when there's not a whole lot of midweek games or like you get into regional play, like him coming out of the bullpen, he might very well earn him a starting spot on the weekend rotation, especially if there's injuries, especially if somebody's banged up. Like he's been pitching really, really well. You could potentially see an all lefty starting rotation for the weekends. So just keep that in your back pocket for now. But he's been pitching brilliantly, and he's been one of those that I didn't necessarily have him down as a big time factor for this pitching staff, but he's been just that. He's been his starts have been incredible. And I think he was an unlucky loser against Dayton, where he came in and pitched really nice game, giving up only 1 run, and then you lose, let that game get out of control, and you let it slip away from you against Dayton last week. But this week was no such luck for Indiana State. He was dealing, and he might have gone the distance. And I think this bullpen needed a little bit of rest too, which was good that they not only run ruled, but they were going to let J.D. Thompson go deep into this game. So impressive all around. I think what you're seeing also with this Vandyboys team, what you're seeing is you're seeing a team that's building confidence just little by little. The confidence is just growing a little by little. And a lot of it's due to like some of these clutch games they've had to, and you have guys that are a lot more focused. I think Sunday was a little bit of a wake-up call because it was it was the most lackadaisical game they've had all year, where it just seemed like they were on a different planet. They were playing hard, but they just were just on a different planet focus-wise. And I think Sunday shook them up in more ways than one. And so you saw a lot more focused, more disciplined team against Indiana State than you did in Game 3 against Gonzaga, and even kind of Game 2 at least. So the two, and that's easy to say on a blowout win, but like I think you just have a really good plate approach, and you do a lot of good things with focus. It'll take you a long way. And so this team it's been up and down, honestly. And Evansville will be a nice little test because they're not as I guess they don't have as much pedigree as Indiana State has coming into this matchup. So I'll be interested to see kind of where the focus is, especially at the plate. Are they gonna hit with the same kind of intensity that they did against Indiana State? Are they gonna are they going to get ready for this tournament they're about to go on? So, there's a lot of things to consider when you look at how this team's going to perform in their upcoming matchups. So, interested nonetheless in all of this. But the point of all of this is that Tim Corbin should visit the portal way more. I think he should understand that a youth movement isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I don't know how J.D. Thompson's going to factor into a rotation, but that dude is pitching. That dude's dealing right now. And so you got to find a way to take advantage of that. I guess taking advantage of that is pitching him midweek and collecting these wins. The midweek games are getting a little bit more difficult as we go. So that's good. But anyway, man, we've had a ton of fun here. Time flies when you're having fun. I guess that's the old adage. So very successful show. Again, to give a very, very brief recap, Clark Lee's fired up. You should be too. The newcomers have been phenomenal. The other guys need to kind of jump on board. Cameron Kozeal, Jacob Humphrey, and also J.D. Thompson has been great. This pitching staff overall, the younger guys have been really good. The older guys have been hit or miss. So, but this is going to be a really exciting team down the stretch. They're getting better each game, believe it or not. So get excited. But that's going to do it for us here on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us on social media. Subscribe. Thank you to the everydayers for making all this possible. Couldn't do it without you. So with that being said, we're going to get out of here, but make sure you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Go enjoy the game against Evansville, and we'll see you back here tomorrow on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Peace.